As always, you'll have to refer to the manufacturer instructions to make sure that all bolts are torqued appropriately and Loctite is used where necessary. Just want to apologize up front. I keep referring to these two long bolts as M8s. They're M10s, not M8s. So for the Kove 800 Crash Bar from Outback Motortek, here's what you get in the bag. You have your front bracket, the left and right crash bar. Now I've separated this into what I think is actually usable on the installation and some stuff that was added that doesn't seem to be part of the kit. The usable stuff is on the left, which is an M8 by 70, an M8 by 80, two M8 by 45s with washers, and then six M6 by 20s with two washers and nylocks each. For required tools, I've put the tools that we used for the skid plate install on the right. We reuse a lot of this, so 1/2" drive, 1/2" to 3/8 adapter, T50 Torx, 3/8 drive, extension, T30, 40, 45, 10 mil Loctite, Allen 654, and then we need to add on side snips, 8 mil Allen, and an 8 mil wrench. So for pre-install prep, I'm going to do this as if you've done the skid plate pre-install. So everything's bolted up, nothing's tightened down, and it's a continuation from there to add the crash bars in. So I've removed the skid plate. I think this is easier. Outback has the skid plate already installed and just rotates it down off of the brackets, which you can do as well. I don't think there's a right way, just whatever you find easier. So I'm going to start with the skid plate off and first remove both the right and left side brackets that we installed for the skid plate install. On the right hand side beneath the rad, let's disconnect the horn, just two spade connectors. The O2 sensor and the horn wiring are held in place by one of these zip tie body clips. You can snip it if you want. At the back of the clip is two small prongs that you can depress, and then it should just pop out. And after that, if you just loosen this nut, just gently, it's a nylock, you should be able to rotate the horn out of the way. It'll make putting the bracket on easier. And just make sure the O2 sensor and the horn wiring are out of the way. A couple quick housekeeping notes for the bracket install. When I reference on the left-hand side, the weld, it's here right in front of the bolt that we removed from the left side skid plate hanger. So there's a raised weld you'll find here. It's a little bit difficult to go over with the bracket. On the right-hand side, there's a reference point that's right here. I'm going to be sticking the right side of the bracket against here and then working on the left-hand side. And the bracket orientation is like this. Sorry for the freehanding here, but it's the easiest way to show it. Hold the bracket like this. We're going to put it against the side here. And then on the left-hand side, we can rotate it up. So we know the bracket's in place. Now we just need to start working it in. Okay, now that we know we have it referenced correctly, the bracket's in the right orientation, now's when that weld is going to come into play. You have to install it equally on both sides. And you may have to push your thumb into the metal while flexing the bracket outwards. It's a very tight fit, especially with that weld mark. And just work the left and right sides up equally, and then you'll end up in correct place. At this point, reinstall the left side skid plate hanging bracket. Remember, the spacer's been removed because this takes place of the spacer from the skid plate install, so that can be put away. And just locate the bolt properly. Don't use tools. You don't want to cross thread that thread in the engine. Next, we'll do the M6 bolt and its hardware. In the front hole, the left side has these cutouts, so it's easier to install on the left first. Assemble that with a washer on each side and the nylock. Right side, same thing. So the skid plate bracket, like we did before, up and behind, we've already removed the spacer. Again, the crash bar bracket takes place of the spacer, it's no longer needed. Another M620 setup is going down in this hole here with the flashlight, just like the other side. And nylock in the washer in the back. Once that's done, I had to unwind the horn wiring from the O2 sensor wiring and fish it over the bracketry and down the back. The O2 sensor would still come on this side, and then you can connect the horn and rotate it back. The wires were somewhat taut, so just be careful and definitely check underneath. Make sure it's not too tight for the wiring where you're going to cause issue. I have enough for it to sit like that. It slightly conflicts with the nylock that we just installed, but once the nylock's installed, you can just fish the wire behind the nylock and it sits nicely. And at this point, you can just tighten that nut for the horn as well. For the O2 sensor wiring, I ran it behind the bracket here and aligned it with the rad hose. I'm going to wait until everything's installed and then I'll zip tie it in place. Just have a second look and make sure it's not on any sharp surfaces from the new brackets. Remove this bolt on the right hand side. There's a spacer behind it, so don't lose the spacer. Remove this T50 on the left hand side. There's a spacer behind it as well, don't lose it. Definitely install the right crash bar first. You need there to be enough play in the crash bar bracket to be able to get this bolt in, which is also the confusing bolt I find for most when it comes to this install in general. To start, I put the 70mm M8 in the top just so you can have a bit of a pendulum and something to hold the crash bar in place while you work this bolt. The question that people have with this bolt and the confusion comes from whether or not it's the same mounting point for the skid plate bracket up front, and it is. So before we had reinstalled this with the skid plate bracket through the crash bar bracket when we were aligning the bracket into place. When we move on to installing the crash bar, the bolt we used during the skid plate installation and then earlier to put the bracket in place comes out, and in place goes one of the 45mm included in the crash bar kit with the washer. It does go into that same hole. We do put the skid plate bracket back in place, so it goes crash bar, skid plate bracket, crash bar bracket, and then the hole in the frame. Locating this, because you're going through 3 pieces of metal and then into the frame, is probably the most frustrating point. I had to use a zip tie to hold the crash bar bracket and keep it lined up with the hole. Then I installed the crash bar, again using this top mount point as a pendulum. Once I had everything lined up perfectly, then I took the skid plate bracket, put it in its place between the crash bar and the crash bar bracket, and got the bolt to line up. And when it's lined up, it goes in super smooth, even with having the radiator hose in the way. It took a couple tries. Don't force it. Definitely don't use a ratchet and try to force it in. It will go in very easily, and it goes straight over the radiator hose, even though it doesn't seem like it. And then finally, we're just going to install the stock bolt here. Don't forget the spacer that goes behind the tab between this tab and the engine. And then last, I don't think I need to show this, but the small M20s with their nylocks will be lined up here last. Install everything loose so that we can get the left side done. Okay, now on the left side, I'm just going to speed this up, try to keep the video short. Use the 80mm M8 up top, so it pendulums again. Stock bolt goes here. Don't forget the long spacer behind it. Another 45mm with the washer goes here, just like on the right side where we had to go through all the different brackets. And then on the front, just the easy small bolts with washers and nylocks with their 2 washers. Here's what I was left with in the end. We still have the same items that came out of the parts kit that are unknowns. The 2 spacers from the skid plate brackets that were just placeholders. Now that we have the crash bars in, we don't need them. The zip tie that was holding the O2 sensor and the horn wiring. And then the right side skid plate, excuse me, bracket screw with its washer.